So happy to be glad, and I'm happy to be glad, but happy to be joined by Councilor Hogan, Councilor Nave, Councilor Paniagua, Councilor Monto, Councilor Joseph Rouser. We have Ann Fordyke here, Corey, and Connor. So glad to be joined by everybody. We're here today to discuss the matters of the sanitation program that we have with our DPW team here in the city of Syracuse and the service that we're providing to all the residents here. Prior to us getting involved with our main topic of rolling out with the recycling carts, just like to address just some past things with the sanitation aspect of things, with us trying to help keep the city clean of trash and everything like that. There's just, I just had maybe one issue with a resident just stating that I think she got skipped. There's three of them. Mm-hmm. They got skipped on the assistance part for the workers to go by and get their trash cart from their house and bring it to the curb, just to be sure that they actually are receiving those services that need the extra help. And if there's any other issues that any other counselors have been hearing, I would ask that you can please state those now. Otherwise, we can turn it over and let Corey and the team go ahead into the presentation.
I mean, we'll open with kind of a quick overview of the trash program, so we're happy to entertain questions or concerns that as well. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. We're good to go?
I mean, have they all sort of been worked out, haven't they? Because initially, the way everything was set up as far as routes go, we were like through assessment. Mm-hmm. So that's all been worked out as far as what houses, because some of them obviously changed over the years, and what are residences and what aren't residences.
Yes, we
because after you skipped St. Patrick's Rectory like 3 different times, I heard from a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So
we maintained flexibility, Counselor, and made sure.
Flexibility's important.
I know, and made sure that. And I think we've hit a point where I think, to my knowledge, the issues have been ironed out. Obviously, providing this type of service to this many number of properties, you're always going to have things that come up, but I think for the most part, we've really addressed those issues that came up as we rolled the carts out.
And if there is problems, the counselors can obviously.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you working together? Like some of the business get the impression they call me, mm-hmm. Why are they excluded? Mm-hmm. So I think we have to explain. Some of these businesses on the north side, they have upstairs apartments. So mm-hmm. I'm going to assume those who have upstairs apartments are going to have sanitation carts, mm-hmm. all those carts, and not them.
Yeah, so Counselor, if you, happy to get in touch with any of those business owners, if you want to put them in touch with Ann or with me, and they can reach out to CityLine. Ann and her team regularly work with business owners to navigate, who can receive, who's eligible to receive sanitation services, and making sure we give them the right number of bins.
Like some of the business, like on North Salina
mm-hmm.
Park, Butternut. Yep. Can they get access to a recyclable bin?
So if they have been given a trash cart through the rollout that we did last year, anybody who has a trash cart will be eligible for a recycling cart.
Okay, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. We're seeing dumps of trash, and I would hope that we get this program. We work even more closer with codes and even mm-hmm. with parks. Let's pick up the trash. It's just notorious mm-hmm. on the north side. If we can get all the trash picked up, mm-hmm. and even on one pickup day, make sure all the trash is picked up. You could mm-hmm. emphasize, and only because I've heard some issues. All right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The goal of the program is a cleaner city, so we definitely want to work with property owners to make that happen. So I just wanted to go ahead, Councilor.
I would also like to just make mention that have we been considering, for those that would like to have a second cart, entering that type of thing, maybe there might be a fee for a person
right.
to
yes,
purchase
we
a second
do.
cart or whatever. And with that being said, if they have the second cart, that way it'll help mitigate the trash, because I did also get some other complaints about some people storing trash on the side of their house mm-hmm. because, it's too much to fit inside of the trash cart.
Sure.
So that we can help mitigate the rodents and stuff like that. And then secondly, with the second trash cart, maybe if people do the proper thing with recycling, mm-hmm. That can also help mitigate the size of the trash bags. But mm-hmm. we're not here to regulate how much trash a household is producing. Mm-hmm. But if everybody is following the guidelines of how to recycle and how we know what's trash and what's not trash, it could also help mitigate the amount of trash that's on the side of people's houses, all throughout the city, south side, north side, east side, west side. And then also, some of the debris, a lot of the debris that we've been seeing is recyclable related as well. So that's something that we can now go forward into talking about other
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah, absolutely, Counselor. I think we would echo that, we will begin with just a really one slide overview of the trash program and how that has performed over the last year. Then Ann will go into second card options and talk through those concerns and questions, counselors, and then we'll go into what the plan is for recycling. But I think we would all agree with your point, Counselor, that many, though perhaps not all, of folks who are having a challenge in needing more capacity than the 96-gallon cart can provide, we think some of that is attributed to recycling, and that's of their not recycling as much as they perhaps could. And so through education, a lot of people just don't know what is recyclable and what's not. Some people don't have a blue bin and perhaps don't have the, it's going to be a lot easier when we provide a recycling cart for people to be able to recycle. And again, pairing that with education, which we'll get into, but completely agree and happy to talk through the second cart option. And so I just wanted to just quickly open by thanking the council for making the time to have this conversation. Like I said, we're going to start with a brief overview of where the program for trash carts is, just one slide, and then Ann will go into the second cart option, and then we'll roll right into recycling and that rollout. And happy to entertain any questions or concerns.
Perfect.
Good morning, councilors. Connor Muldoon from the Office of Analytics, Performance, and Innovation. We've been working very closely with our departments of Human Resources and our BAA, looking at the safety of this rollout over the past year or so. We're just over a year from the beginning of the phase one that occurred in Memorial Day, May of 2023, and the full city rollout of Labor Day in September of 2023. Over the past year, it's been a remarkable success from a safety perspective. Prior to the cart rollouts, the sanitation led the city with more than 300 annual slip and falls and strains to workers, despite the small size of the staff. That was at a rate of 4 times per employee than that compared to uniformed police. Right? Since the introduction of carts, there have been no injuries that have required treatment related to carts, and shoulder injuries across the board in the sanitation department have decreased from 17 per year to 1 per year, and that one was not related to a cart. So from a safety perspective, which was one of our primary justifications for enacting this policy and this operational change, remarkable success.
I just ask a question really
Yes,
quickly.
please.
Is it a full year yet? Has it been a
So we started the pilot, which was 20% of neighborhoods in May of last year. So it's been more than a year since sanitation crews have been working with carts. Yeah. And then the other perspective that has garnered a lot of attention has been the compliance and utilization of by residents, making sure that they're following the rules of what's supposed to happen. We've been working with, consolidated some of our background systems to keep better track of this. Right?
Connor, can you hold for a second?
I
So
can.
can you go back? So what does workers' comp look like last year to this year? Do we have that number yet?
I believe we do. I would need Lisa to say that number if she has it off the top of her head.
Good morning, councilors. Lisa Schmidt, Risk and Safety Manager for the city. Were you looking at a specific statistic, or would you just like me to read what I have?
Well, maybe, I guess in sanitation would probably be helpful.
Perfect. So in 2022, our shoulder injury costs for sanitation workers was around $150,000. In 2023, that dropped to $63,000. In 2022, the Waste Collection Bureau accounted for 41% of all the shoulder injuries citywide. In 2023, it was only 23%. In 2022, there were 17 incidents involving shoulders.
Okay, so what about things that aren't shoulders? I mean, other things get hurt lifting cans, I would
Of course,
assume, right?
then you're primarily looking at lifting issues. Again, because we're not lifting, we're not really seeing those sprains and strains like we have. There are still sprains and strains, but they have absolutely nothing to do with the carts.
So do all the city streets have the right trucks, the new trucks to pick? Because in my street, when I see them, they lift the bucket, the black new, and so there's nothing lifting it but themselves.
Yeah, I would say, we are, and Deputy Commissioner Fordock has been working with Commissioner Robinson very closely with employees to make sure that they are using the program as intended. But again, we are working to prioritize a culture that for a long time has been prioritizing speed to one that prioritizes safety. And that change doesn't happen overnight. So understandably, some employees think it's still faster for me to grab the bags and throw them in the trash. And we're trying to work with our crew leaders and again with DPW leadership to make sure that we demonstrate the value to the employees of using the program as intended. And again, it's going to take a little bit of time for us to really change the mindset that it's always been as fast as you can do it, as fast as you can do it. And really, our priority is to send you home in the same condition you came to us in. And it's just going to take some time. And so we're still working through those issues.
So before the trash carts were implemented to go along with workers' comp and the safety of the employees, picking up the trash, throwing it in the back of a truck, that would be considered heavy duty, right? That would be considered a heavy duty job. Now that we have the arms to lift the trash carts into the back of the trucks, is it still considered a heavy duty job, or is it light duty, or like what's the difference with the retrospect of the job?
Excellent question. So I would say yes, from a body mechanics perspective, they're still pushing and pulling. So yes.
Yes, too.
There's still, it's still, I don't want to use the term heavy duty,
Okay.
But there cannot be a weight restriction.
Okay.
I mean, that speed is sometimes geographically affected because certainly people going east into the city on Whittier Avenue, our guys picking up trash, our guys and girls picking up trash with a car right behind them because they can't get around them. That sort of like maybe affects some of the way they handle the trash too. So I think we got to be cognizant of that too.
Absolutely. And one of the important things that we learned during the pilot last year was that we had also put some different technology into the trucks to monitor the speed of service. That was one of our biggest concerns. Is this going to take 3 times longer because we're using these tipper arms, right? And so we were able to monitor on an every route, every day basis, does this impact the speed that it takes to complete these routes? And we expected there to be some increase. It actually turned out that it was extremely consistent. There was no observable change in the amount of time that it took using the old heavy throw model versus the carts and tippers model. So,
Really?
And that's just part of the change and culture change that Corey referenced about working with all of our crews to make sure that we understand why we're doing these things in a safer manner. And then just on the compliance issue as well, making sure that violations and fines, making sure that we are treating our residents appropriately. My Office of Analytics, Performance, and Innovation just took a pretty comprehensive look at the past year of data to see all of the different fines and violations that have been issued across the city. And when we sum it all up, we're really looking at who are the repeat offenders, right? There are a number of ways to view this. The violation is a warning, right? You get the yellow sticker on your trash, and you have 24 hours to clean it up. So from looking at who received warnings, less than 1% of properties are frequent violators, have received more than 3 or more violations. But then they have the ability to clean it up. And we see that the vast majority of residents do take care of that. When we look at fines, right? So those are the people who are just, we're not able to reach them. They're not understanding what the rules and regulations are. 0.12% of properties have 3 or more fines. That's 1 in 832 residents are a frequent flyer, or frequent violator. And there are some people that we could provide every single week. We could go to their door and have a conversation with them about how are we, what are the appropriate ways to dispose of your trash. And for some people, we may not be able to reach them. 1 in 832, so 99.82% of all residents learning how to throw away their trash in this new system is a remarkable achievement. We as a city should be very proud of that metric.
So if I can be
doing that?
reminded, how many fines do you get before you get how many warnings do you get before you get a fine?
So it's on a per issue basis. So
Okay.
a violation occurs and the sanitation crew or environmental services or Sam Perry put the violation notice on the property, either on the parcel or on the front door. And they have 24 hours to clean that up, right? So it's just one violation, We see that more than 70% of our violations are remediated correctly by residents. They're pulled back from the curb. So of those fines, those are likely people who have received far more violations than the actual number of fines they receive. So you're receiving multiple messages, multiple communications saying, hey, you made a mistake, please fix it, and they're choosing to ignore that.
Wouldn't it be much better to just pick up the trash and just put the tag on the door? Because we have a deep problem on the city, on the north side. For case in example, went over to Jasper Street, boarded up house, 5, 6 bags. We put a tag. The owner lives in New Jersey. What we should do, if you want to tag it, contact the property or send him a letter. That's what I did. I sent him a letter. He didn't respond, and many don't. But we got a severe problem with trash in the city. And I'm going to emphasize, please pick up the trash because the varmints are getting in there and they're making it worse for our neighborhood. I just would wish that every department in the city would work with each other. But we got a terrible trash problem, though. I got a property over on North State, and I've contacted departments before, overloading. It's still there. We got a terrible trash issue. You know, we do have illegal dumping going on in our city. There's illegal dumping. So a lot of times there's dumping going on in houses. They get ticketed and they're just dumping it. Take over what we did over on Titus Alley. What a job it was to clean that up with the amount of abandoned vehicles where we had to get codes, DPW, city police involved. I could just point out all over, there's illegal dumping going on. Go up to Strand Place, illegal dumping, loose trash. I am emphasizing, again, please, before you put a yellow tag, it's either just pick up the trash and warn them. Maybe the guy doesn't even know about it because we got to keep the city cleaner. And everywhere I go on the north side, it's dirty. There's a lot of trash. And could we do that, please? Could we start just picking up, and then we could tag them?
Councilor Rose.
So how are we handling landlord situations where the tenants leave trash out, we tag it, we fine them, the landlord has no idea?
So, I mean, we are working on, so I will say, you know, that approach is consistent with the ordinance that's on the books right now. So I just don't want anybody to think that anything has changed with carts. You know, even from my time at code enforcement, you know, 10, 11 years ago, it was, you know, we cite the property, they have 24 hours, and we pick up the trash, and then we send a bill to them. What we are working on and what we have done through the City Payment Center is we do have an option available to folks if they would like, you know, if they want to sign up for an email notification. It's not as tailored as it could be, and we're working to kind of refine it through some of the software that we're working on so that, you know, whether it's working through the email addresses we get through code enforcement for the rental registry, like being able to send the landlord an email as soon as that ticket is written to say, we just wrote a ticket at your property, here's the photo. You know, I'm more confident than I have been, I think, ever that, you know, because that's something that we've explored for a long time. We tried to do it through IPS, and then, you know, and Vicky's team through the City Payment Center has come through sort of a interim solution. But I think we're very close to being able to roll something out. I mean, ultimately, it is the property owner's responsibility. So, you know, if they do live out of town, you know, we wouldn't know that by looking at necessarily the trash pile. And, you know, hopefully they should have a local property manager who's keeping an eye on the property, but understanding that with a 24-hour turnaround, again, it's trying to balance the concerns that Councilor Nave is raising to try and pick it up as quickly as we can.
And being fair,
but
too.
also trying to recognize that, you know, not everybody that owns a property in the city lives in the city. They might not know that, you know, something has been dumped at their property. So it's a balance that we try to strike where, you know, we want to try and give people due process, but at the same time, to Councilor Nave's point, keep the city clean.
I mean, I've got a half dozen calls about, you know, landlords who are reputable landlords, but somebody, you know, dumps trash in front of their property. Sam's very active. Sam Perry does a great job.
Does.
And he'll ticket you. And these people won't even know about it.
Right.
You know, and then all of a sudden they get a letter saying they got to fine and
Right.
stuff. So,
Right. And so
we got to find a happy medium.
Yes,
yeah.
and I think we're pretty close to that. We've seen a couple demos even within the last few weeks of something to integrate with the softwares that we're already using that would, you know, hopefully be able to build a notification to the landlord so they would know.
I think another another, I don't know, additional piece to all of it is, like Councilor Nave said, all of the departments working together, because you have residents who are aware of the fines and have larger amounts of trash, and instead of getting a fine for having an overload of trash on the curb, they're compiling trash on the side of their home. And we've been dealing with that for weeks now, with different residents that's just trash on the side of their house, piled 8 feet high. The sanitation crews, I'm pretty sure they see this. If it would be easier if they're able to take a photo of this trash and the address and send that over, instead of, waiting for someone in the community to have to complain to one of us or something like that. So those departments working together would be much easier to kind of rectify it before it gets out of hand.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. You're good. Okay.
All right, Ann Fordock here, First Deputy Commissioner. Thank you all for having this meeting with us. So a big topic for us, which I want a lot of dialogue with you all on this subject, is the option of a second trash cart for city residents who request it. So, we have some options here. You saw Corey's email. She laid it all out as well. My preferred option is annual fee or a one-time cost, because there is a cost to this. There's a cost to the cart. There's a cost to the service. Oh, closer. Cost to the cart. There's a cost to the service. There's a cost to the trash in the cart. And so that would be absorbed by the rest of us taxpayers if there was not a fee for that service. So I just wanted to put that out there and see if you have questions that we can go down and see what is the preferable option.
Have you kept track of how many residents have actually asked for a second cart?
That's a great question. I believe it's all contained in See-Click-Fix. I did not run a report before coming here, but.
Can we get that? I'd be interested to know.
I mean, obviously it costs the city the tipping fees and all that. The more trash we generate, the more it costs the city. And, we clean the trash off the streets, but in the end, I think we got to be cognizant that, this is a cost to the city, the more trash we generate. So I would be in favor of an annual fee.
And were you able to look at the estimates we had prepared in that? We would obviously have to work out how. Vicki is here from finance, and she's probably thinking, oh, thank you, Anne, for this. But, it would be something we'd have to keep track of. Who? And make sure they're making that annual payment to continue that service. Obviously, you couldn't just have a renter call up and say, I need a second cart. You would need the owner to make that decision. Probably be a form to fill out, something like that. We would have to work all of those kinks out in that process. But I believe it's completely doable. And I believe it could happen in a pretty short time.
Do you have an idea of what the annual fee would look like?
So when we added up the disposal cost of the tonnage that would be in there, the actual weight of the trash, and then the collection time of, tipping those additional carts, and the price of the cart, price of delivering a cart, our estimate was $475 would be, say, the first year. And then after that, the cost is lower because you're not paying for the delivery of the cart and the purchase of the cart again, right? So it would be $405. Obviously, prices of carts could go up in the future. They could go down. We're going to have labor costs, as we know, are going to go up every year. But this is the calculations that we made.
And that would be the annual.
What was the one-time cost? What was the one-time?
$475.
Option B.
Option B. That's a great question.
You don't have it, it's okay.
I mean, I think in part this, BNL did some of this analysis for us, and they were able to provide, their cost estimate based on the data that we provided. But obviously, we remain open to talking to the council about what we think is a reasonable price to cover the city's cost and also for residents. So,
For those that cannot pay $475 in an annual fee, but still do need the trash card, can they pay that over the year, or?
I think we could structure it in whatever way the council thinks best.
Because that could be steep for somebody that, lives on a
Sure.
fixed income.
We could do, quarterly. I mean, I don't want to speak for Vicky because that's way outside but I'm sure that we could come up with a couple different proposals for the council of a way to spread that cost over the year so it's not upfront.
Killer.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so what would that look like for residents? Would it be, you have to be current on your taxes?
We could structure it however, happy to work with the council if that's something the council would, that you need to be current on taxes or not have any outstanding violations. If that is criteria you'd like us to incorporate, we certainly could.
I don't want to restrict anyone
Okay.
from
That's-
getting trash. I just
Yeah.
want to know if you had already discussed
I
any
had
of
not
that.
discussed that, and I didn't want to kind of put barriers on that.
Okay.
And just to speak to Councilor Paniagua, private haulers typically do quarterly when they charge their residents, and $100 a quarter is not unusual for
It's
that.
a little easier to pay.
Correct.
We could have a two-tiered system, obviously. We could have for rental property and one for, homeowners too.
However you'd like to structure it, we'd be happy to work with the council on what the details of that proposal would look like.
That's an interesting idea, though, owner occupied versus renter.
I mean, my street is full of Grubhub drivers delivering stuff to people, up and down, mostly rentals, mostly kids, so I think that could be an interesting way to do it, two-tiered.
Have you had a situation where someone moves out of a house and they take the container with them?
Yeah, that's what I was
Is that a
saying.
problem?
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
This is
And
only a north
so-
side problem, I bet.
We have, but they just call City Line, and we check all the records and, verify that that's a valid address
Yeah.
and all of those things and get them what they
Because
need.
I went to a house on Douglas Street, and I saw all these bags. And I go, yeah, these bags, you gotta have, well, we're moving out, so I don't know what happened. But the point was, we do it. But in other times, as a counselor, I go to a couple businesses, I saw some bags over on North State Street, and I just went into the store. I said, sir, you're subject to a fine, you don't take care of it. And I went back, and it was taken care of, So I think that's one of the things we want to do is, so we're not always calling the city line, is just try to work with individual businesses or homeowners to let them know it's important to take care of this so you don't get fined.
So if someone does steal a cart or moves with a cart, and say you have that second cart that you paid for, they wouldn't be paying for another cart if it was taken or so?
No, so they'd have one cart that, comes with the house.
Yeah.
What if it's replaced by us or whatnot, and then they would have the additional cart that they paid for. And Connor talked a little bit about us keeping track of things. We have a computer system that will be able to show you, the driver, when they pull up, whether there's one cart there or 4 carts there. So if they did pull up to a place that had 6 carts, they can say, that's weird. Why do they have 6 carts? And we can always look into it.
But so if someone's cart was taken, they wouldn't be paying for it. I'm just thinking about the future for the second cart.
Correct.
If the second cart was stolen and they reported it,
Yep.
they would get one at
Correct.
no
That
cost
would
to
not,
them.
that would not be the second cart in this scenario. That would be a replacement cart.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. Yeah.
Any other questions on the second cart? Okay, so again, happy to work with the council to come up with a proposal that is, again, addresses the city's cost, but also is reasonable for residents.
Hey, what color is those recyclable carts going to be?
Well, we haven't ordered them yet, Counselor, but I think we're
So
looking.
some people know the difference.
Yeah, I think we're looking probably at blue, since,
Okay.
as a practice, generally people associate recycling with blue, so I think that's,
I like blue.
Yeah, I like blue too. Okay, so if everyone's comfortable, we'll move on to
We could
recycling.
do green
And
for Chip Hill.
what's that,
We could
Council?
do green for Chip Hill.
We could do green, but then what happens when eventually we want to compost? 50 years from now. Okay. So, just moving on to recycling, and this is something that Anne reminds us of pretty regularly. We can get the majority of residents to recycle more if we give them the proper tools and the education. And I think that really pairs and highlights the two important parts of our recycling rollout is the tools, providing that cart, but also we need to pair that with education because, what is recyclable for many people might not be clear, and so we want to make sure we pair those two things together. As we've mentioned to the council before, beginning this fall, Okra will no longer be providing blue bins. Okra, the Onondaga County Resource Recovery Agency, is ending its blue bin program, and that's across the board. It's not just in the city of Syracuse. It's across the county, and Kevin Spillane, the executive director of Okra, is here with us today. And it's really a decision that the board made, the Okra board made 2 years ago to address many of the problems that the city is facing, where blue bins just no longer meet the need of the community. And so Okra has worked very closely with a number of municipalities to encourage them to move towards what is now the industry standard, which is a covered cart with a lid to better maintain those recyclables and reduce litter and all those things. So beginning this fall, the blue bins that the city distributes to residents will no longer be available. And so that's in part why there is a certain level of time sensitivity with purchasing the recycling carts that we'd like to roll out.
All right, we have a great picture here. It's an amazing illustration of the difference that the trash carts have made. And I just don't take this picture for granted because I think that this is just a taste of how great it's going to look once we get recycling carts as well. So right now, we know there's advantages, right? So if we give them the right tools and the education, as Corey stated, I believe we can really increase the recycling rate. Now, our recycling rate right now is about 12%. So that means out of the total solid waste produced, about 12% of that is recyclables and the rest is trash, right? And the national average is around 33% for recycling rate. So we have a long way to go. And yes, that's not participation. We are studying participation. Participation is different. Participation is when you look down your street and you see that only 2 people are recycling and there's, 18 other houses and they're not recycling, right? That's a different number. How many people recycle versus the quantity of the total recycled. So 12% is our current recycling rate. And what we know is that we pay $100 for trash and we pay $40 for recycling. So every time you can change those numbers, we save money. So if we could get, say, double the amount, now maybe that's a lofty goal, but maybe we go from 12% to 24% recycling rate, we could save as much as $300,000 in just tipping fees from the trash. So there's an economic, advantage here, as well as an environmental one. So less trash going to the waste to energy plant and being burned, more recycling actually being recycling at the material recovery facility in Liverpool. So, any questions on that? I see I've caught some of your attention with this.
How do you get to that $300,000 savings?
So, you take 5,000 tons of recycling, and if I doubled that, the cost difference between trash and recycling is $60. So $60 times 5,000. Yeah, that's things that are currently recyclable, but people are throwing them out. You're pulling them out of the trash at your own house, right, and putting them in the recycling instead. That's where that comes from.
Simple things like, which will probably be part of the education process, I'm sure. like in our recycling bins, we don't have to bag them, so do we just throw what's recyclable?
Okra
in this
wants
bin?
them loose, correct? Because it sorts better at the material recovery facility, which I know we've talked about this before, but we need to get you all a tour. We need to get you to Liverpool, get you a tour of the recycling facility. You'd love it. It's a very eye-opening experience.
Sounds thrilling.
Yeah.
So, and then that'll help also probably leverage a little bit of what is going on the black trash bins, versus now you can do, do the recycling in the new recycling bin. So maybe it'll be better.
Well, and that's part of this is currently you have to go get your own recycling bin, right? You have to know to go get your own recycling bin. You have to know what's recyclable. You have to just know this stuff intrinsically. Now, Okra's been doing recycling for 30 years. It's no secret to those of us that have lived here the entire time, but not all of us have that knowledge. And so I have to get out of my own solid waste bubble sometimes. And so this, I think, really helps, is that we're going to give everyone that recycling cart and hopefully make it as easy as possible to learn what to put in it. And so it's going to be a good problem to have if we have everyone recycling.
So are we going to need, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to, next question, are we going to need new trucks or are these with the same trucks?
Actually, I think we're going to talk about that in a minute if you want to go there.
Okay, so you can hold on that and.
So, I mean, twinned with this, there would be like a public media campaign. Obviously, you got it already planned. I mean, 12% to like, I mean, that's awful.
Yes. So
compared to the national
we
average.
actually.
So, I mean, we got to get the
Yes.
information. I know there's a huge problem because everybody gets information from all sorts of different sources and all that. But out of there, I think we could make this, you could probably make it sort of entertaining too.
Speaking
So-
of that, Counselor, is the Recycling Partnership is one of the grants we're getting. And so they're giving us a project manager and money for education. And the Recycling Partnership has done recycling cart rollouts across the country in every major city. They are experts in this, and they have tons of free material and resources for us to use. And they know when you're supposed to send it, how you're supposed to send it, and they've just time-tested this education model. So I think we have the pieces in the right place. We're ready to pull that trigger and start educating the public. Okra's done a great job educating for 30 years, but City of Syracuse didn't focus in on that and tailor that message for their residents. So
What is the, you said you're ready for that, like what is the route that you're taking?
For communication?
Yeah.
So we do have, if we want to advance to the next, if we can, Sol, because we do have a communication slide a few back, but do you want us, if it's okay with you, Counselor, to just touch really quickly on the biweekly? We can go back, Sol. I just want to keep rolling.
Oh, here we are.
okay.
I mean, as far as the education.
Right.
piece.
Right.
Okay.
So if it's okay, I mean, we can jump to communication, or we were just going to go quickly through the biweekly and then
okay.
get to the education
Okay,
communication.
all right, that's
Okay, great. So I wanted to answer this question about buying new trucks, right? So currently, we have 15 trash routes, and we have 9 recycling routes, but we frequently run them as 7 just because of staffing, equipment issues, and so pretty much we're running at half right now. You look at 15 and 7. And so why does that happen? So you have all this trash, you have all this recycling. Why are they able to cut the routes in half when they pick up recycling? It's because not everyone's recycling, right? We know that. With only a 12% recycling rate, we can say that some people are recycling really well, but some people probably aren't recycling at all. So if we give everyone a trash cart, my hope, my dream is that, sorry.
No, that's okay.
My hope, my dream, if I give everyone a recycling cart, is that they actually use it and recycle, right? But that creates a problem. I don't have enough trash trucks and recycling employees to all of a sudden have 15 trash routes and 15 trash trucks and 15 recycling routes and recycling trucks. I just don't have it. And as you all know from us coming here every year, it takes a lot of time to get a trash truck. It could take 2 years to get a trash truck or a recycling truck, a packer. So what we've seen in other communities that go to that 96-gallon cart for recycling is that they go bi-weekly, because you're previously using a 14-gallon recycling cart from Okra, and you're now going to go to a 96-gallon recycling cart, a blue one, and you now have that capacity to do it bi-weekly. And that's how we can do it this year.
What does that do for city employees?
No?
Where do they go then?
So
No, they're not being reduced at all, because we're currently picking it up with 15 trash routes and 7 recycling routes. And so you're just going to split them in, yep, you're splitting it in half.
yeah,
Yep.
so you'd split like you'd split a Tuesday route in half, and so this is what we're able to accomplish with the same number of trucks and employees that we have right now.
Yeah. If there was any efficiencies made, I need someone to pick up tires. I need somebody to pick up bulk. I need someone to make sure, all the handicap stops are picked up. I have plenty of other designated activities for sanitation workers to ensure that we're picking up everything exactly the way we're supposed to be.
Now, if we were to cut that in half, would that keep the pace of how they do work the same, or would that increase it?
So it's the same, because, how do I explain this?
Doing other jobs.
They'll be doing other jobs, but so if we had everybody recycling and they had 7 routes on recycling and 15 on trash, they'd be picking up twice the amount of stops, but we're making it bi-weekly, so it's the same amount of stops, right?
I'm asking that because all of us here have observed when our staff pick up trash and the rate they go. And I think when we first initiated this, the trash cart was to help with safety and reduce injuries. That was part of the initial reason a lot of us here supported that. And just watching the staff, when they move, they are running, they are going, they are sweating. And when you look at that, yes, they do look fit, right? They do look fit, and they're doing a great job. But just thinking in terms of long term of that, running like that, I don't know if that has been ever discussed and
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit, Counselor, that, this approach to safety instead of speed is going to take some time. I mean, you have some folks who have worked in sanitation 10, 15, 20 years, and speed has always been the priority. And so, we are working with Lisa's team, with our leadership, our crew leaders, our superintendents in sanitation, with Ann and her leadership team at DPW, to try and emphasize that safety is the priority now and not speed. And I think, given the reduction that we've seen in injuries, I think that message is getting through to a number of employees who are seeing the value of the program, because they're not going home and their backs hurt and their shoulders hurt and their knees are killing them. But it's going to take some time to get everybody on board. But you're absolutely right, Counselor. It's speed has been the priority historically.
So how are we going to monitor what's in the blue bin versus what's in the trash can? I mean, it has to be safe to argue that if someone doesn't have enough room in their trash can now, and we slap a blue one on top of it, there's going to be a lot of people that just hide the garbage at the bottom of the recycle bin.
If we were fully automated, you actually don't know until it goes into the hopper and a camera sees it and it's already too late. Because we're semi-automated, we're actually at an advantage, because there's a manual person right there who's going to flip it and be able to cite it.
So take it and then
So
cite it.
if somebody, I think we would follow the same thing we do now.
Flip the lid open.
Right, flip the
Okay.
lid
See
open.
it, and then cite it.
If somebody right now filled their recycling bin with trash, we would not pick that up, because that's trash, and we would cite and say, this is a recycling bin, you've filled it with trash. So, the practice, the container might change, but the practice itself doesn't change. We do expect that we will have some folks that just see it as a second trash container. I think that's where the education comes in. I think that's where, and we'll get to it later, the warning period comes in, where we try to educate folks and remind them that this is not a second trash container, this is for recycling. And I'm confident that I think we can get there. We might have some chronic problems as we do in sanitation overall, but, you know, the practice itself doesn't change, the container changes.
So what about people that are trying to do the right thing, right? So we have stacks of cardboard. 65-inch TV creates a lot of cardboard that is absolutely not going to fit in the bottom of that cart with everything else, especially if it's biweekly. So I mean, this is what I do. I stack all the cardboard to the right, the Amazon purchases, and then you fill the can with all the plastic. Are we going to cite them for having a stack of cardboard next to their blue can?
I think that's a great discussion for us to have. I mean, the ordinance hasn't been written yet, and I think, you know.
And also, not to interrupt you, but I also have concerns with elderly people who may get an Amazon television with a giant box, having to use a box cutter to cut it up into pieces and stuff it down into that can. I mean, we definitely have a population in this city that needs help regularly, so.
So I think we can find a solution for that, and I think that, you know, we welcome all of this input in the writing of the ordinance
What
to
is
make
Rochester,
it easier.
Auburn, what are all these places? How do they handle that?
A good question. Bulky cardboard that doesn't fit.
Well, it's not
They
even,
just-
I mean, I guess it's bulk in general. So if you watch someone buy laundry detergent at Costco, that takes up all those giant containers. I think you can fill up that recycle bin pretty quick.
I mean, even now, like Corey was saying, a lot of this isn't changing, it's just the container. But residents, as of right now, with their blue bin from Okra, are encouraged to break down things. So, you know,
Yeah, but Ann,
breaking
I can
down
get
those
8 blue
containers.
bins now, right? I can put out as much recycling, and I do. But
Yeah.
I mean, so we can have as much as we want now every single week. I'm definitely concerned that if we're looking
And I don't
at-
want to dissuade people, anyone
Right,
from
right,
recycling. So I do think, you know, there's room for us to work together and come up with a solution about, you know, the bulky cardboard. It still would have to be broken down, you know. Don't tie it up. And, you know, you can't have styrofoam and packaging inside those boxes. We see that a lot too. So just following the same rules, but I think that you make a valid point that this isn't trash. So it shouldn't be handled the same way.
You still have foremen that follow the trucks around, right? I would hazard a guess, and maybe we're overthinking this, but I would hazard a guess that every foreman knows exactly who recycles and who doesn't. I bet you, I mean, that's just probably a fact.
Yes, it's internalized. It's probably not something they think about too much.
I bet you they know.
I wanted to just touch on, has future development, meaning development within like the next 2 years, been taken into account for biweekly versus weekly numbers? Not necessarily the pickup, but more or less, do we need to start working on at least 3 of these for future development? Is that half of this, like?
Meaning, how many trucks we're purchasing, or
Yeah, like, what's the
participation rate still goes up. Are we going to
Yes.
need more trucks and more staff?
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, and I think some of that also plays into some of the data we're collecting through route optimization to try and estimate how many stops are we making for recycling. And I think it's a really great point. You know, as we roll this out, we're going to see what the numbers look like, in part through some of the data that, Connor, you can speak to about route optimization. You know, if we know right now sanitation just cruises down this street because nobody has a recycling bin out, we're going to know through the tracking in the vehicles that, wow, we're spending more time on the street. We average this amount of time per stop, so we can estimate that we've got about this many stops. And I think it's important, it's a really great point, that we keep a close eye on that so we can prepare for the future to say, you know, the recycling rate continues to increase year over year, so we're going to need more staff and more trucks. Is that fair?
It is. I'll speak to this in a couple slides, but we're working with some of our vendors to better find some efficiencies in our operations so that we can do more with less, and we can balance some of the ways that we're currently collecting things. We are aware of we're working with MBD of some of the new properties that are going to be coming online. Each route in our current system that we're working on building, again, I'll get into this in a second, is about 750 stops. So when we add 750 households to the community, then in aggregate we'll need one more stop. But because those 750 households would be dispersed across the city, it would be piecemeal across the multiple 60 or 70 different routes that we run across a week. So certainly something for us to be mindful of, but we haven't reached that tipping point where we would need an additional route to cover any new development that's currently scheduled to come online.
So if we were to, I'm still on page 7. So if we were to do 15 tippers, would that mean we would have to order everything from the beginning, right? We don't have any in stock at the moment, right?
So if we had 15 routes for recycling, as well as 15 routes for trash? Is that the
No,
question?
if you look at page 7, it says 15 tippers. Assume that there are 45 workers, the whole bi-weekly thing, right? So with all of this, does that mean that if we were to say, let's do recycling as is at the moment,
Weekly.
we
Yep.
would need to order
Yeah, I don't
everything
have
from
the, I
scratch?
don't have
We have
the,
nothing in-house.
I do have enough to do bi-weekly.
What we have on the left is what we currently have and dedicate to recycling, correct,
Okay,
Dan?
okay.
What we have to the right is what we would need to deliver
Okay,
the
that's
service
clear.
weekly. And, as Ann alluded to, if we need to get 8 more trucks, we're probably looking at a 2-year time frame
Okay,
before those
okay.
trucks arrive. So you're right, Counselor. The left is the current resources that we have, and with those resources, we can deliver the service biweekly. The right is what we would need to
Okay.
in order to deliver it
Yeah, I
weekly.
just wanted to be clear. Now, my next question is, if we assume that we go into this route of getting new carts, would the color be the same as, or would that? Because I could.
Counselor Nave wants blue. Counselor Nave wants blue, so we're going. We're
Because
going
I can
one.
just see, right? I can just see somebody saying, you know what, I didn't have trash this week. I didn't have recycling this week.
Yeah, so
I'm just gonna.
I
use-
would have told you that the reason I would go with blue because the residents have been trained for 30 years from Okra that blue means recycling. But my new answer is because Councilor Nave wants
Nave
them to
said
be
blue.
blue.
Yeah.
So
Don't keep track of them. I got a green bin, I know where it belongs.
But you're right, Counselor Bajoke. We're going to have to work with residents to make sure that they don't see this as just a second trash bin, and so
But they're smaller too, right?
we can talk about that, Counselor.
Yeah. Right.
But I
So-
wanted to just go quickly through just to highlight other municipalities that do biweekly, just to let you know we're not entirely on our own. But to Counselor Monto's point, reaching out to these municipalities to see what do they do for large cardboard that goes outside the cart is a good note that we'll take that we can follow up on.
okay, so yes, those are other communities who are locally doing biweekly. And did you want me to speak about that size or just go down? Okay.
We'll come back to size if that's okay.
Sure. And so just turning your head behind you to the screen here, we see our current route structure that's been in place for 50, 60 years, right? Each color is a different day of the week. And we see that there are different areas of the city that have grown or changed and evolved. And there are some geographies that really don't make a lot of sense. It requires our crews to drive further, to take more time, spend more gas. And this just isn't really an efficient way to be collecting our municipal solid waste. And the map on the presentation that you have, the printout, is the new way that we're getting to. So we could, Sol, go to the next page here. Oh, there we go. So this is what the new scheme that's currently in development with our vendors is what we're going to look like. So Sol, if you just go back and then forth again really quickly. So this is the current scheme where everything's sort of all over the place, and then we're looking to consolidate our geographies so we can have more efficiencies in our current operations and doing more with our current crews. This will require some changes, and we're very much looking forward to working with the council to communicate these changes to our residents as we get ready. Our current schedule is looking to roll out these changes in line with the recycling carts this fall.
Are you going to document the efficiencies that we're going to save by doing this and confusing everybody in the city of Syracuse?
Absolutely.
Okay, because,
Get a
that's
return
important.
on your investment.
No, yeah, please.
But you can see in that previous map that we're on different sides of town sometimes on the same day. There's just these weird outlier routes. You can see the purple and the red are so intermixed, and then you have these two neighborhoods that are in the middle of the green area, and it's just not efficient or effective. And so as much as we may have some disapproving voices. I think that this is going to make things so much easier even when you're new here and you can't figure out what your trash day is. It's going to be so much easier. Yes.
We'll get besieged by phone calls.
Yes.
I mean, is this a done deal, or do we get to weigh in on it?
I mean, this is an optimization that provides us, so right now,
I mean, is there anybody that knows why it's like it is now? I mean, we talked to any, like, veteran
I don't know, and it
DPW
doesn't really
people?
make a lot of sense, because right now, you have inconsistent numbers within the day. So like, you have routes within Monday, some are light, some are heavy, and then each day is different as well. So could it be due to, houses that aren't there anymore? I don't think it would have caused that kind of off by hundreds and hundreds of pickups of disparity there. So I couldn't tell you. It's probably the same time. I think the mayor always likes to say that it was 1940s when we did the snow routes. I think it's probably similar, timing on that. But I think this is such a great improvement to the city and going to be so great for the employees.
Well, and we are keeping residents in mind, Counselor. I mean, I would say
Well, I'm not saying you're not.
no, I know, but just so that I think the majority of the changes that people are going to see is for the day later instead of, missing the day. I would say the majority of them is, mine was Tuesday and now it's Wednesday. So if I make the mistake in the first few weeks while we're all getting used to it and I put my trash out Tuesday, it's not like I've missed it for the entire week.
I mean, it's going to cost you some money to let people know. You're going to send
Right.
cards and all that other
Correct.
stuff. So
Yeah.
I just want 'em-
Short-term pain for what we think is long-term gain for. It's also for employees. I mean, if talking to some sanitation workers, to have that disparity in the workload, per route per day is pretty remarkable. So I think this will help all around. But it won't come without some challenges. But again, I think it's a short-term communication pain. It's a service that people have come. Obviously, they deal with it every week, but we think in the long term this will be the best for residents and also for employees. Okay. Communication and education. Sol, you can take a break from your role as Vanna White.
Good morning, counselors. Sol Munoz, Public Information Officer for Infrastructure. So I know you're all excited to learn how we're going to educate and communicate our residents through this whole process, that it's going to involve several different aspects of how we hope to get in touch with residents. As part of our communication and education plan, we're going to use our standard forms of communications that are available to us, the ones that you've seen before, such as mailers or social media, press releases, publicity, press events, all of the things that we've done in the past to communicate these changes. But based on feedback that we've gotten from counselors, we've added a couple more to make sure that we can really reach as many residents as we can. One of them includes a coloring book that we're developing with a mascot to send out to students for the Syracuse School District so that they can learn about recycling and the steps to take through doing that, as well as doing weekly recycling tip videos about how to properly recycle what's recyclable and what isn't, as well as doing more community and event engagement through like local TNTs and other fairs and things that we can go and answer questions live and in person to people. We will work with our partners and recycling experts such as Okra and the Recycling Partnership, who have done this many times in the past and are helping advise us through this. But just knowing that our previous communication plan and taking it and just developing it further.
I just wanted to add that I think a maybe QR code affixed to the cart would be a good idea. That way they can go right to whatever videos you're putting out for that. The other thing is, I don't know if the schools still do this, but I don't have any children small enough to be in school, but I don't know if they're still recycling in schools and teaching that. I think that since I had kids in school, the recycling has absolutely changed. So having that as, I would probably say more of like some type of monthly challenge for students or something like that to, who's recycling the most type of thing. How many stars can they collect? Or,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of elementary school kids because even for some of us adults, like, the old adage, it's hard to teach a old dog new tricks. But, if you start them younger, then they'll carry that on. So as far as the elementary school kids, having something or someone there weekly, daily, I don't know. And it could be how it used to be. What was it? The crossing guard thing when the students used to be a crossing guard. What was that?
Safety patrol.
Safety patrol. Like
Hit the
you
belt.
earned it,
Right,
and
hit the
so,
belt.
Artie still got his belt.
I do.
so maybe weekly
Yeah.
or monthly, it could be a new person standing there,
Yes.
guiding the kids as to what to recycle per se.
I do know, just to add to
Student
that,
teacher student.
Oops, sorry. I do know that just to add to that, Denise from City Line does go to a lot of the back to school nights for a lot of the elementary schools and does deliver information and now goes with blue bins and distributes blue bins, but can hand out a lot of information and does talk to a lot of parents and students, as well as just we hope that through giving the coloring book and things, we can kind of stir up the conversation a little bit more in our schools. It is geared towards more elementary school students, so that should hopefully spark some more conversation about that. But
But
we
the
can
coloring
definitely
book
take
isn't
it
going to
into-
hit it if I'm not physically doing it.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying, it needs
Yeah.
to be, that's why it could even just be a student
Yeah.
there who's teaching students how
Yeah.
to, what to do.
Perfect. Yeah.
So, does this education will come in the different languages that are being spoken in the different neighborhoods?
I'm hoping to get it translated. We do have a translation contract, but I have to still work out the kinks of how we might be able to get it translated, but fingers crossed, it's in the works.
That's the goal, and also working with our MBD staff that works so closely with New Americans, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to go to the places where they are to try and share information and tools for them as well.
Not only New Americans, Spanish.
Right.
and
No, it's
different
everybody.
kinds of-
Yeah.
Another thing we could do, is work with the arts programs in the city schools and how to recyclables. I saw a gentleman actually collect-
Upcycle.
recycle recyclables and reuse them.
Reuse.
I saw a
Upcycle.
gentleman, he
Yeah.
actually takes bottles and he gets pieces of our glues them,
Yeah.
makes it very decorative with flowers. I saw this last night.
Yeah.
He puts them on display. So maybe students can use how to take a can and use it as keep your pencils and decorate the can. I did it in elementary school. We took a can, they cut out the Campbell soup can. We took a piece of paper, I was in the second grade, and we recycled that.
Yeah.
Make a flower pot out of it.
Well, we did take the feedback from the council, and we do want to do more to reach out to our youth.
This is all great.
So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sol.
Thank you, Sol.
Okay, just a few quick slides remaining that Ann will run through.
All right.
This one's not going to be quick.
Similar to trash, we want to have a warning period where we issue warnings and just do more education to ease them into the process. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's going to be as challenging because they are used to the carts and they are used to recycling. We've been having recycling for 30 years. So those rules aren't changing as to what you put in the recycling, but we are going to be, just doing that additional education.
This is where I have a question. So right now, if someone puts out their blue bins and there's something that is not recyclable in there, we're not fining anybody for illegal set-outs inside the recyclable bins, correct?
It would have to be egregious
Okay.
for us to cite them. There are currently things in the ordinance that if you're mixing wastes together, we can cite you for that. So if you're putting trash in your yard waste, if you're putting yard waste in your recycling, we can. It would have to be egregious. Typically, they'll tag it with like an oops sticker or a warning, or just leave it, and you would call City Line and say, "What did I do?"
So is
But
the plan to
when they
treat,
leave it, people don't know why they left it. It's like
Correct.
some people don't know not to put construction stuff with
In your
waste.
recycling bin, or yeah.
And they
Yeah.
just don't.
so
take it.
is the plan to treat the two cans as two separate illegal set-out actions? So if Mrs. Rouser puts out her recyclable bin on the wrong week, if we go bi-weekly, do we tag that and say pull it back within 24 hours? Like are we looking at a possibility of someone getting $350 fines?
I think that if they put it out on the wrong week, yeah, I think they would get a warning tag, and because it's not going to get picked up because there's not even going to be a recycling truck there to pick it up. So, I mean, I think as far as wrong week, we're going to do massive education on that. They're going to be able to call. They're going to have something to hang on the fridge. It's going to tell them when to put out. But just like today, you look outside and you always see what your neighbors are doing as to whether your trash is delayed on a holiday or not. You're going to have that same kind of interaction. But if you put out your recycling on the wrong week, it's just not going to get picked up because that recycling truck will not even be driving down your road. But the other issues you brought up, so there's some things that are always going to be a violation. If somebody puts a TV in there, trash or recycling, that's a violation. And that's always been, and that's always going to be, right? If you wanted to have, so say it is filled with garbage. As of right now, the ordinance provides that you're not supposed to do that. And that would be an illegal set out. So if you want to talk about different ordinance for the recycling violations, we can talk about that. I don't know what that would look like at the moment.
I think that 2-3 months is too little time to educate a whole community on doing this right. Maybe you want to stretch that a little bit. I mean, look at how long it took us to get the other trash.
I think the education's starting before the rollout, though. So, like, our education is going to start probably effective immediately the moment you approve the purchase of the carts, right? And so that is going to be just hitting it again and again and again. This is coming. This is what the expectations are. This is what you recycle. And then when they actually get the carts, that's the 2-3 months of warnings.
I mean, if
You
we
know what I'm
have,
saying?
if we have July, assuming the council, approves the purchase of the carts in July, we would have portion of July, August, September to educate residents. We roll them out September, so that gives us October, November, December. So, I mean, it mainly gives folks pretty much through the end of the year, to try and, because I agree with you, Counselor. I mean, it does take a long time. Part of the concern, though, is by extending the warning period too far, then that sometimes enables bad habits, and so we would just need to find that right balance. So, it would give us through until the end of this year.
Mindset is
Right.
very difficult.
Agreed.
And so,
No.
just to put
Sure.
it out
No,
there.
that is helpful feedback.
So how has the citation compliance been with the current carts?
With the trash carts?
With the trash carts.
So,
So just on the first slide of the presentation we had, Counselor, we've been remarkably successful from our expectations. When we look at just violations, so number of warnings, we're really focused on people make mistakes all the time, and we give people the opportunity to correct those mistakes, right? But looking at those frequent flyers, residents who have received 3 or more violations, it's less than 1% of properties. And then when we give them that opportunity to correct that and look at the fines, right? So you have 24 hours to correct the mistake, and people who continue to not correct those mistakes, so looking at 3 or more fines, it's less than 0.12%. So 1 in 830 properties are these frequent flyers, frequent violators.
And how long, and I mean, it had to be higher when you started, right? But progressively it's reduced. How long has it taken to really get there to that comfortable compliance?
Yeah, I don't have those specific figures in front of you. We did come just before when we did the pilot last year, right? So we had 20% of households for the sanitation cart pilot, and then we presented to you the findings of how well are people complying. And yes, we did see a spike in warnings, not fines, in warnings in those first 2 weeks as residents become aware of the new changes. And then every week consistently we saw by each day of the week, we saw every day of the week over each week reduce in the number of violations that we saw, which is an indicator that people are understanding what the behavior change is and that they're complying with that, right? And so to Corey's perspective there actually is a counterintuitive thing happening here. We don't want to give a very long learning and education or enforcement period, warning period where we don't enforce, because that ingrains bad behaviors. Well, people say, oh, here's my new recycling cart. I can do whatever I want with my new recycling cart. We don't want people to learn those mistakes at the bat, right? So we would put some additional warnings or oops stickers and additional communications in that first 6 weeks to say, hey, you made a mistake, this is brand new, totally understand, but in 6 weeks, we're going to start to enforce the violations that are in the ordinance and enforce those fines. And still give you that 24 hours to correct that, but we don't want to give a 3-month learning period to do that. We want to be as tight as is responsible so that residents can learn what their expectations are.
Now, those resident more of a rental or more residential, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination. It's certainly across all neighborhoods. We saw some so when we look at that, the 0.12%, it's 48 properties across the entire city have received 3 or more fines. Some small concentrations on the north side and in Eastwood, but that's really more of a perspective of where there's just higher concentrations of residents. So we're not seeing a higher rate of violations. We're just seeing where people are located.
Why are you picking on
But
Eastwood?
again, well, I mean, again,
Love
it
Eastwood.
still goes back to they might not be getting fines anymore, but they're collecting on their side or the back of their house. So just being, aware of that is, I don't know if that's a Sam thing to add on to, or if that's a driver. Okay.
And I will say again, if the yellow stickers are not going to be in a language that people understand in the household, that means nothing.
No, I think we learned a lot during the trash, doing the first phase and the pilot program and all that. And you've exhibited things about being flexible. That's what we have to do. We're going to have to learn through this phase too. But we already got a record of doing this. So I think we can, as long as you're receptive to us, amending some things, I think this thing will work.
I think none of us want more residents with $350 fines that they absolutely can't afford. So let's try to figure out how not to do that to people.
I will say one of the things that the council can help with is providing as much time as possible. So, I certainly am not putting any pressure, but the sooner we can purchase the carts, the sooner we can start the education rollout. The more time we can give people to educate would be helpful. So I will just make that plug for more time.
I just wanted to say that in terms of language barriers, ombudsman through code, I know some of them that are Neo-American that speak, and I'm wondering if that's, through those violations, do we bring them in to say this property, do we use them in that manner at all?
Sol, do you want to say something?
Hey, counselors. So our website is translated to the 5 top languages spoken in the city, and the violations do have a QR code that sends you directly to the fines page that can be translated to those languages. So I do think that we are making an effort to translate these documents so that people understand what is going on, but we are trying to do more. We are trying to translate as much as we can so that everyone can see what is going on and understand it correctly and know what the proper steps are.
And I will say that Sol also has, has experience and sensitivity towards the language barriers, and so often pushes us to use more visual, not, as little word-based as we can, and more visual things so that a TV in an icon, a TV in a cart with an X through it, so that regardless of, whether or not English is your first language, that visual show is attempting to show you what is allowed and what's not. But it's a great point.
Right, but I know ombudsmen, right? They go from door to door, and I'm just saying that because even people who are great at reading and can see things can still
Right.
It's people who can read and write and are native born are not exempt from those doing that mistake. You know what I mean? But in terms of Neo-Americans with ombudsman, I'm just saying that if we see repeat offenders that are Neo-Americans, that there may be a language barrier, can we utilize ombudsmen that go to these neighborhoods to also have a conversation with them and, before we cite them?
Yeah, no, it is a great point. And we've also been looking at those 48 properties that have repeated violations to try and figure out, let's dig into those, given that it's a manageable number, 48 is pretty manageable when you're looking at a city of, 40,000+ properties. Let's take a look at the photos and the citations to figure out what's the crux of the issue here. Is it someone that just doesn't understand and we can approach with more education? Is it somebody who just willfully is not doing it and then, our options are a bit more limited? But that's a really good point, Counselor. I think we can use the data that we've pulled for repeat violators and also do what proactive communication we can, if you'd be willing to connect us with the resources to do what proactively we can to before that violation is cited.
It's important that we learn this in school.
Yep.
Because for so many families, it's the children who understand English, but not the parents. And this is, this goes back many generations. So we should start really in the schools.
Absolutely.
I'd also be curious to know if those 48, how many are renters that are just letting the fines pile up on the landlord, right?
Well, I think that if out of those 48, can you break them down into districts and let us get that information based
Absolutely.
on our district so that we can also probably do some type of outreach?
That's a great idea.
That's a
Happy
great
to-
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
happy to
thank you.
provide that information. Okay, there's one
Sorry if I put
more
anything on your
left, if the counselors are open to it. One more slide.
Okay, so elderly and disabled, we've got about 200 on a list already that we've made some accommodations for. And those people, we're going to continue to accommodate them. So, we already know that a 96-gallon cart might be too big for their needs, and that they have an exemption for them. So they can continue to use that recycling bin if that's what suits their needs. If they call and say, no, I want that cart, then that's fine. But they already have a recycling bin, and although Okra won't be providing any more of them, they can hold on to that bin and we can still pick it up manually. So there's already an existing list, so this is going to be much smoother transition because we already know who they are.
So do you envision us having to maybe buy a smaller container down the road for those people that only have?
I don't, because the recycling bin we can still use with the equipment.
But eventually they'll run out of life, right? Because they break.
We're going to have to pick up the old ones from the residents. So we're going to have to keep them and probably have supplies for, I think your question, maybe 10 years down the road is all.
I'll be in a very warm climate, retired somewhere.
And I just want to say thank you, Corey, for taking care of that elderly resident that I had in my council district and just that
Happy.
issue.
Yeah, and again, our city line staff and Ann and others work with these residents every day. And again, the point is not to force someone to do something that physically they're unable to do. It's to try and get the city clean and meet people at where their needs are.
And just on that again, what are the criterias that they need to provide?
So there's a couple different things. There's a medical form that we have them fill out with their doctor, and they just call City Line. Denise can either email them, mail them the form. There's other issues such as topographical issues. We do evaluate those individually. Sam Perry assists me in assessing whether there's just a real physical constraint regardless of physical ability. If there's 2 flights of stairs, we're going to find a solution that works best for you.
What are we doing now for those properties where there's like those Genesee Street properties where there's 2 flights down?
So if you're specifically talking about the student housing,
Yeah, that's an example.
I've been working with that landlord, and those students are physically able to take them down. You just take them down empty, and then you deposit the bags into them. The solution of just leaving them in the road, that's not a solution. So we've been working with the manager, but we tried several different things. I think we've landed on in a good place now. So.
What about the properties? I always bring this up because of the way they look. On Bellevue, like the ones that are like really steep up the hill.
So they can use a regular trash can and, just bring it down and fill it. But
Okay.
using loose bags because there's only the street, loose bags that then rip open or get hit by cars, and not a great idea. Some of them have like a landing, so sometimes they put them on the sidewalk, and in those situations, when it's like maybe 2 steps up to the sidewalk, and that's the only place, that's fine, because that's where they've always put it. That's where they put it before carts, So a lot of the answers is like, well, where did you put it before carts, and how did you put it out, and how can we modify that to fit the employees' needs and the residents' needs?
And do some of those properties, I'm just thinking that, do they have like a rear street that they utilize at all?
Oh, if there was a street behind them, It would be great if there was a street behind them, but a lot of them don't, I think, have any parking at all.
Yeah,
So
okay.
there's no driveway, there's nothing.
Councilor Gathers.
All right, if there's no further questions, thank you everyone for being here. This will conclude the meeting at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.